Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Gridiron Genius. In today's video, I'm going over my top 45 wide receivers going into 2025. I've already went over my QB and running back rankings, so go check that out if you want to. And I'm also going to be doing tight end rankings, so subscribe if you want to see those. Sorry if I go fast throughout this list. It's just there's a lot of names that I got to get through them pretty fast. But I'll give you guys a second to look at the list. But let's just jump right into the S tier. And the first guy I have on this list is none other than the Triple Crown winner. Jamar is still in a very similar offense. The defense is going to be bad. Burrow's going to be throwing him a lot of balls. I could easily see Jamar finishing as a wide receiver 1 again. You know, you have nothing to worry about if you get the 1.1 and you draft him. And here's a guy who could also finish as a wide receiver 1. Just 2 years ago, he was a wide receiver 1. And then obviously he had a season of injury. Dak had an injury. That affected obviously CD a lot. He was still the wide receiver 8. So he's going to be amazing. His floor is the wide receiver 10. His ceiling is a wide receiver 1. And he's most likely going to be a top 3 wide receiver. So he's a good wide receiver, but here is where in the S tier, it starts to get a little more shaky. Justin Jefferson, he's had an injury over this offseason. He also has a rookie quarterback, but I mean, with Addison being suspended for the first 4 weeks, he's going to be a really good option. He's going to get a lot of targets. He's going to be good. You know, he's, to me, the best receiver in the NFL skill-wise, but, you know, he just has those limitations that I just mentioned. But that moves us on to the A tier. This is where the tiers start to get a little bigger, but I view all these guys as clear wide receiver 1s. And the first guy I have is Nico Collins. Nico is really set up for success. Before Nico's injury, he was on pace for 2,000 yards in the wide receiver 1 in fantasy. And now there's no Mixon. Now there's no Diggs. Now there's no Tank Dell. He's going to get so many targets. I also think he'll outperform his projected touchdowns. They only have him at 8, and he had 7 last year. So I think Nico's going to have a fantastic season. But, you know, if you want to pick this guy over him, that's fair enough. You got a QB upgrade. Whether it's Wilson, whether it's Dart, that's a QB upgrade over Tommy DeVito any day. His target share in that Giants offense is insane. It's over 30%. He's really a PPR demon, and when you're a player like that, you demand the ball. And that moves us on to Puka Nacua. There's some things I like about Puka, but there's also some other things that scare me. Last year, he averaged 17 points and only 3 touchdowns, which is obviously a very good sign for fantasy. But at the same time, we don't know if he's going to necessarily stay healthy or Stafford, along with the addition of Devontae Adams, but I feel like he still will be the clear wide receiver 1 in this offense. But with reports saying that Stafford's doing a lot better now, it makes me feel a lot better about Puka in general, so I wouldn't be worried if you have him. This leads us into Amon-Ra St. Brown. Over the last few years, he's been one of the most consistent wide receivers in fantasy. But after the loss of Ben Johnson, and now I feel like they're also going to lean the run a little more with broken out Gibbs. This could hurt Amon-Ra's stock, but I'm not too worried if I have him. The Lions are going to be in pretty competitive games this year, having a really tough division. Not to mention, week 1, the Lions play the Packers, and now the Packers got Parsons. That's going to be a really interesting matchup. We could see a little touchdown regression, especially with Williams taking some of those maybe. But I'm still pretty happy if I have him. He gives you a really good floor. That takes us into BTJ, who finishes a wide receiver 4 last year. Trevor Lawrence really didn't play with him after he broke out because it was more under Mac Jones. Along with now with the addition of Travis Hunter, that's also going to take some targets away from BTJ. Liam Cohen will find a way to get this man involved. That Jaguars offense is improved, so I do expect more scoring from them. That brings us to the last guy of the A tier, Drake London. I just can't put him any higher because I don't know how much I trust Penix. I know that Penix really feeds this guy with targets, but I do think they're going to lay in the run just because Bijan. I feel like Penix will also struggle a bit because this is his first year starting. Mooney still is there. Kyle Pitts is still there too. So, I mean, they do take away from London's ceiling. But, I mean, I totally could be wrong about Penix. You know, he could be a star. I just don't really see that happening this year. I definitely am a fan of Drake London, especially if he falls in drafts. But that wraps up the A tier, and let's go check out the B tier. And the first guy I have in the B tier is A.J. Brown. He's been dealing with a hamstring injury throughout this training camp, and also Saquon Barkley still is there, and Devonta Smith. I feel like the Eagles will be in closer games, so they're going to need to pass a lot more. That could definitely benefit AJ. I just hope he can work through his injury and he'll be all good to go for the season. And that leads us into Ladd McConkey. He was pretty injury prone in college, and now with the addition of Hampton, the Chargers will stay run heavy. He still has Herbert as the number 1 target and is an elite route runner. I'm just a little scared that he could get injured. And that brings us into Mike Evans. Mike Evans has been one of the most consistent receivers over the last decade. He's going to be especially elite these first few weeks without Godwin. I mean, he gets 1,000 yards every season, but I am worried about a little regression from Baker, along with the addition of Mbuka. But during the first half of the season, I love Mike Evans in my lineups. And that takes us into T. Higgins. Like I was saying earlier about that Bengals offense, they're going to need to pass. T finishes a wide receiver 17 last year, but he just always finds a way to miss a few games each season. I like him a lot. He's a pretty consistent floor, but it's just mostly the injuries, and now that Chase Brown's broken out, he could see a little less targets his way. He's overall a good wide receiver too. That's where I kind of prefer him. And that takes us into Terry McLaurin. To me, he's just too touchdown dependent. He had 13 touchdowns last year, and I don't know if he can keep that pace. He finished as a wide receiver 7, and I just can't see that repeating, especially now that Deebo Samuel's there. Even if he's washed, he'll still take targets. But that running back situation in Washington's pretty weird, so I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work out. Maybe that benefits Terry, but I'm just interested to see how the Commanders' offense is going to be. I like Terry more as a flex just because in my wide receiver 2 is a little more dicey. That takes us into Devontae Adams, who was wide receiver 11 last year. A lot of those points came after him and Rodgers refound that connection again in the second half of the season. I don't necessarily know if he's going to get that many targets, that many points, just because now he turns into a wide receiver 2. I've seen interviews of him this offseason saying that he likes to celebrate with his teammates more than score himself, so I think he'll be fine at taking that backseat role to Puka. It's like a Batman and Robin role. I'd expect 14 to 15 points out of him a game, but he just doesn't have that wide receiver 1 ceiling that he used to have in fantasy. And that takes us into JSN. He finished as a wide receiver 9 last year, and he really broke out and really showed everyone why he was an underrated fantasy option. We all seen that Sam Darnold has the ability to support a wide receiver 1 in Justin Jefferson last year, but the Seahawks have already came out and said that they're going to be more run heavy. I expect it to be a pretty QB friendly environment. I mean, there is little target competition in Seattle though. I know they have Cooper Kupp, but I'm not really worried about that. I mean, last year DK and Lockett were still there and he was still the wide receiver 9, so JSN is definitely going to be a pretty good option. That leads us into Garrett Wilson. He has even less target competition than JSN. It's just I don't know how much I trust Justin Fields' arm. He's going to see a lot of targets though, just because they were college teammates, but I just don't really think you can put him any higher than this just because he doesn't have that ceiling the other guys have just because of Justin Fields. And that brings us into the last guy of the B tier, Tyreek Hill. You know, he was the wide receiver 1 only 2 years ago, and it's really crazy how much he's fell. Just anything I hear about this guy in the Dolphins, it's just always bad. You know, Achan's injured. Tyreek says that the Dolphins and him need to work on their relationship. He's injured. It's just not good. He was a wide receiver 18 last year, and he was going within the top 5 picks. It's just really sad his downfall. I mean, I hope that they can work it out. I hope I'm wrong about Tyreek. I mean, he still is one of the fastest players in the NFL. Obviously, if Tua can stay healthy the whole year, that'll boost Tyreek's stock. But until I see some good news coming out of the Dolphins organization, I have to put Tyreek here. I obviously can't put him in the C tier just because he's a super high ceiling. I just don't know if he's really going to live up to expectations once again. And that moves us into the C tier, and this is easily the biggest tier of the whole entire list. A lot of these guys I view as flexes or low tier wide receiver 2s. And the first guy I have in the C tier is Marvin Harrison Jr. He was taking over Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., and Lab McConkey, and he's not lived up to that pick. It's not really his fault. I'm more blaming on Kyler. Obviously, 885 yards in real life is not bad, but when you're the wide receiver 30 in fantasy, that's not great. I mean, there is little target competition there outside of Trey McBride, but Kyler definitely needs to step it up this year or else they'll get a new QB there. Harrison's really risky, and he could really boom or bust, so I just try to avoid him and get a safer option if I can. But I definitely see the upside if you want to draft him. And here's a guy with a lot of upside too, Tet McMillan. Tet still is a rookie, and we will see some bad drops from him. We've already seen some in the preseason, but he's going to get pampered with targets. He really could be the Malik of this year's fantasy, just because of the amount of targets he's going to get. I don't know how good this Panthers offense is going to be, but if Bryce Young can look how he did in the second half of the season, I feel very good about Tet. And that brings us into Xavier Worthy. Someone really needs to step up in this Chiefs offense now that Rashid Rice is suspended for the first 6 weeks. I don't know if it's going to be him. I don't know if it's going to be Kelsey. But now that he has a year under his belt, I feel like Andy Reid will definitely draw up some interesting plays for him. This guy will definitely have speed to his advantage, and the Chiefs won't be able to get so many easy wins, and they're going to need to pass a lot more. And that brings us into George Pickens. I'm a really big fan of this Cowboys offense. I think that Pickens is a really great undervalued option. He finished as a wide receiver 42 last year. I definitely expect him to get more than 3 touchdowns. Him and CD are definitely going to create a lot of opportunities for each other. If one's not open, the other one will be. That Cowboys running back room might be the worst in the NFL, so they're going to pass almost every single play, and that's really going to open up a lot of opportunities for Pickens. The next guy I have on the list is Sutton. Sutton definitely is aging, but he was a wide receiver 15 last year. I'm a pretty big Bo Nix believer, and Sutton's going to be his number 1 option. Sutton definitely doesn't have that ceiling the other guys have, but he has a pretty consistent floor. I know they just added Evan Ingram, and Marvin Mims could get some targets too, along with the backfield of RJ Harvey and J.K. Dobbins. But Sutton will definitely be still a great option, and I like him a lot in my flex. And that brings us to DJ Moore. We really don't know who's going to be the wide receiver 1 of this offense. DJ Moore has been the wide receiver 1 in every single offense he's been in. Out of him and Rome, I mostly just like to draft whoever's cheaper, but the Bears offense will definitely be improved now under Ben Johnson, and that could create a lot of opportunities for DJ Moore, but they do have a lot of weapons on offense that they can use, so that's why I have him falling a bit from last year as a wide receiver 24 compared to 16. And that takes us into the highest drafted wide receiver of this year's draft class. We all know he's going to play both sides of the field, so that definitely could take away from his ceiling, but you don't draft a player that high just not to use them. He definitely could be gassed though if he's guarding the best player on offense and then is being shadowed by the best player on the defense, but BTJ is still there, so that will create opportunity for Hunter. He was able to do it in college, so that gives me a little hope. I just don't know if this is the year to necessarily be drafting him. I still am in some leagues, but I'm a little scared, especially week 1 he's dealing with an injury, so I don't know how many snaps he's going to get necessarily. I mean, you don't win championships by not taking risks. If you really like Hunter, draft him, don't let people talk you out of it. But that brings us into Calvin Ridley. He's coming off 2 1,000-yard seasons in a row, and now gets a QB upgrade in the number 1 pick in the draft, Cam Ward. I definitely like Ridley a lot because he's that number 1 player in that offense. He's going to get a lot of targets and a good amount of touchdowns. He's definitely going to get a lot more than 4, and you can really pick him up at a great value in your drafts. Obviously, we could see some struggles out of rookie Cam Ward, but I still think he's going to try his best to feed Calvin Ridley. And that takes us into Emeka Egbuka. I really like this kid a lot, especially these weeks that Godwin's going to be out. He's really going to eat. We've already seen that 2 wide receivers can coexist in that offense. He's been getting so much praise in that training camp. Being compared to Amon-Ra St. Brown, I'm just a really big fan of him, and especially because you could have got him at such a good discount in your drafts. Next, I have Devonta Smith. He honestly has an underrated floor. I know that he has some injury concerns there too, but he is that clear wide receiver 2 in that offense. And like I said, I do think the Eagles will definitely be in more pass now games. I just realistically can't see Saquon getting another 350 touches this season, and that will definitely benefit Devonta Smith. And that leads us into another wide receiver 2 on another offense, Jalen Waddle. There's been reports out of the Dolphins camp saying that he's emerging as a wide receiver 1, but I'm not going to believe it till I see it. He definitely does have the talent, and he's actually really young. He's only 26 years old, and honestly has underrated speed, but I just can't put him any higher just because his QB's health. He definitely will be better than last year as he was a wide receiver 46. We definitely will see an increase also on his touchdowns because he only had 2 last year, but I like Waddle a lot as my bench wide receiver 1 just because he does have a lot of potential. I just don't know if I can necessarily trust him. And that's going to take us into the D tier. These guys are definitely a lot more risky, and there's not as much upside with these guys just because there is some glaring holes in their games. And the first guy we'll kick off the list with is Rashid Rice. We all know he's suspended for 6 weeks. That's a long time, and that could lose you a lot of games if you drafted him pretty high. When he comes back though, he's gonna be very, very good. We already seen how good he was in the healthy games with Mahomes. I just can't put him in the F tier just because he's going to be really good when he comes back, but you just know already he's going to miss 6 games. If he gets not injured on top of that, he really had a bust of a season. I feel like once he comes back, he's going to be the wide receiver 1 in that offense, but there also is a chance that Worthy could run away with that wide receiver 1 role if him and Mahomes keep building up a connection during those first 6 weeks of the season. Rice is just ultra talented. I just can't force myself to put him any lower. And next I have Jameson Williams. He finished with over 1,000 yards last year and was a wide receiver 22. I'm just a little worried about him the first 2 weeks of the season when the Lions are still finding their footing without Ben Johnson. Williams is definitely reliant on those big plays, which definitely does make him a really big boomer bust candidate. This is why I don't really necessarily like to have him in my lineup just because he doesn't get those consistent targets. I definitely do see the upside, especially if it's a 60-yard touchdown. The Lions are going to be a pretty competitive team in a very hard division. And that takes us into Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers is only the wide receiver 25. And Lamar was a QB1. I don't necessarily know if he's going to finish as low as I have him currently on this list. It's just he's so inconsistent, and it's not really his fault. It's just he gets so many inconsistent targets. In the red zone, when you have guys like Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, most of the time they're just going to run in the ball. So that really caps off Zay Flowers' touchdown ceiling. Not to mention Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman, Isaiah Likely, they're all still there. I know Likely is dealing with an injury, but that really shouldn't boost Zay Flowers' ceiling too much. I'm just really not a fan of Zay. But I mean, who knows? Maybe he could step it up this year and prove me wrong. It's just, to me, he's just a bench receiver for now. And that leads us into DK Metcalf. He really is the only wide receiver there in that Steelers offense. It's just he is very reliant on the deep ball, and I don't know if Rodgers has it in him anymore. Rodgers is looking very, very slow in all the videos I've seen of him, so I'm not expecting too much from DK. Not to mention Rodgers really couldn't succeed in that Jets offense, and this offense is worse. So I'm not expecting a lot from DK or Aaron Rodgers. And that leads us into Ricky Pearsall. I'm a really big fan of this guy. You can get him at such a nice value. Now that Debo left, Ayuk's injured, someone's going to have to step up in this offense, and I think it's going to be Ricky. It's a pretty similar situation to what happened with Jennings last year, and he's currently dealing with an injury, so that opens up room for Ricky. Him, CMC, and Kittle are really going to carry this 49ers offense, and they have one of the easiest schedules in all the NFL. I honestly think by the end of the season, he could be a low-tier wide receiver too, so I'd feel pretty happy if I got him at the discount I did during the draft. And that takes us into Rome Odunze. Kind of similar to what I was saying with DJ Moore, I don't know who's going to be the wide receiver 1 of this offense. You know, you could have flipped him in the rankings if you like one a lot more than the other. I mean, he really only was a rookie last year, so we haven't seen him really break out yet. Like I was saying, that Bears offense should be much improved. He definitely should get more touchdowns than 3. Really, the only thing we've seen out of him so far in the preseason was he got 1 target, sadly only, and he dropped it. So that definitely did drop his stock a little bit, just because he didn't get as many targets as I would have liked to see out of him. And that takes us into the last guy of the D tier, Matthew Golden. During these first few weeks of the season, he definitely could play a big role in this offense. Christian Watson's out. Jalen Reed is currently in a walking boot, so Golden is definitely going to have to step up. I definitely do like a lot of what I see of him. And in the preseason, I'm pretty sure he had like a 39-yard catch, so I'm pretty excited for him to be used for these big plays. And that takes us into the final tier of the list, the F tier. These guys I like a lot as my bench wide receiver 1 or 2s. I mean, if you're in the top 45 receivers, that's still pretty good. And that brings us into the first guy of the F tier, Stephon Diggs. We all know he had that season-ending injury last year, but now he gets to step into that wide receiver 1 role again in New England. He honestly was pretty underrated last year in fantasy before his injury, and that Patriots team definitely did get an improved offense. Now they got him and Henderson. May has now had a year to settle into the NFL, and I expect Diggs to get just a lot of points just from the amount of targets and catches he's going to get. And that brings us into Jerry Jeudy. He was a wide receiver 12 last year, thanks in part a lot to James Winston. I definitely like Jeudy a lot if Flacco can stay the starter, but I already know throughout the season they're going to be rotating QBs. You don't have all those QBs just not to use them at all. If you're the Browns, you have nothing to lose playing all your QBs, so Jeudy might have questionable weeks depending on who the starter is that week. I definitely can't see him finishing as a wide receiver 12 again this year, but we all know he is pretty good when he gets the ball thrown to him. And that brings us into Josh Downs. He has solid separation and yards after catch, and I definitely am a fan of Daniel Jones over Anthony Richardson, but what really bumps him down for me is that Colts offense isn't going to be great. I'm just really not as high on this guy as I once was during the offseason, especially after the addition of Tyler Warren. And that Colts offense still does have Michael Pittman. And that brings us into Jordan Addison. There's just too many negatives before the season's even started. He's already suspended for the first 4 weeks, and then he comes into a rookie QB. He obviously did have big games last year, and I'm not saying he can't have that again. I just don't think he's worth taking the risk when most likely all he's going to be is just a flex. But that leads us into Jacoby Myers. I really don't know what to think about him, especially after he requested a trade. The Raiders are going to be run heavy under Ashton Genty. Not to mention, we all know how good Brock Bowers is, but Geno definitely is an upgrade over Aiden O'Connell, and this Raiders team is improved as a whole. I just really don't know what to think about Jacoby. He just doesn't have that much upside. He was decently consistent last year, finishing as a wide receiver 19, but being a 28-year-old wide receiver, I really don't know what's going to happen with him. I don't know if the Raiders are actually going to trade him, but we'll just have to wait and see. And that leads us into a guy who could be washed, but he'll still play a role. Deebo Samuel is not what he was on the 49ers, and it's pretty obvious. He was a wide receiver 44 last year, and he was in the ideal situation. He still couldn't step it up after Ayuk got injured, which was pretty sad to see. Maybe he just needed a change of environment to revive his career, and now he doesn't have that pressure of being the wide receiver 1 anymore, and some opportunities definitely could be provided to him because Terry will get a lot of the attention, and if Daniels can pick up where he left off, I feel like Deebo will be in a good spot, but just don't go expecting that old Deebo Samuel. And that leads us into Chris Olave. This Saints offense is going to be bad. It's going to be very, very bad, but he still is the number 1 wide receiver for this team, and a lot of the scoring opportunities will go to him. I don't know who's going to be the quarterback throughout the season, whether it'll be Tyler Shuck, whether it'll be Spencer Rattler. The Saints will make Chris Olave a focal point of their offense. I just hope that he can stay healthy. I do like him a lot, and I really hope that honestly he gets traded. But for now, I'm just going to have to keep him at wide receiver 43, and that leads us into Chris Godwin. If he can even be remotely anything he was pre-injury, that will be a win. We really still don't know when he's projected to return. It still is a good sign that he's not on the PUP list. But like I said before about the other Bucs players, there's just so many players in that offense. But that leads us into the last guy of the tier list, Shakir. To me, someone has to really step up in this Bills offense. Whether it's him or Coleman, if the Bills really want to be a competitive team and make it to the Super Bowl, someone needs to step up. I know he's been battling through an injury, but last year it was Josh Allen's number 1 option in the receiving game, having the most yards on the team. But yeah, that wraps up the list, guys. Comment down below and let me know what you guys thought of the list, along with who you think the wide receiver 1 of this year will be. But yeah, thanks for watching.